I'm Steven.
I'm Chris.
I'm Stargate Pioneer.
And I'm the French-Canadian sensation.
And we're the official GonnaGeek.com podcast, a podcast member of the Gonna Geek Network.
Just like the one you're listening to now.
The opinions expressed are those of each individual host.
Check out all the other podcasts
At GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
And get ready.
Because geekiness begins in
3,
2,
1.
Let's Geek!
Hey everyone, I'm Chris Farrell, and welcome to this newest installment of Nerd Alert News. And by newest installment, I mean episode 23. It's hard to keep on top of all the nerdy news that floods the internet, but that's where this show comes in. I'm going to do all the hard work. I'm going to find the news you need to know. Just as a heads up before we move on to the headlines, the show is probably going to be a little bit shorter this week just because I couldn't find a ton of great news stories that were really fantastic that I thought were great to share. I did find some really good ones I wanted to share, but not as many as normal, so there won't be as much detail. But don't worry, news is bound to pick up for next week, and my hope is we'll have a lot more cooler headlines for next week. But with all that being said, why don't we just head on into the headlines? First news story comes from EpicStream.com, where we found out that Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is returning. Sort of. So there's a group out there called Poem Studios that is doing a modern upgrade to Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, upgrading it to use the Unreal Engine 4. Kind of pretty cool. If you've seen any of the games built with that engine, they're absolutely gorgeous, and KOTOR is a bit of an older game, so it's definitely a graphics upgrade. But here's where it gets even cooler. The unofficial project is called Knights of the Old Republic Apiarion. It's recreating the game's original content with a new graphics engine, Unreal Engine 4, but it's also adding new content. This includes new missions, new interface, new inventory system, new companions, and much, much more. Now that sounds awesome, but the question is, well, is BioWare going to let them do this? Or better yet, is Disney going to let them do this, since Disney owns the rights to all the Star Wars stuff? Well, Poem Studios thinks the project will be completely legal. They cite a reason saying Black Mesa and Renegade X, which were unofficial remakes of Half-Life and Command & Conquer Renegade, were both greenlit. People were allowed to make these unofficial remakes. The difference, though, the development teams kind of backed them up and said you can do this. Nobody said that from either BioWare or Disney yet. Now, that's the caveat, yet. LucasArts and Lucasfilm was quite well known in the past for being very supportive of fan films, fan initiatives that might have made use of Lucasfilm IP, but was done for fan reasons and not profit reasons. If this new KOTOR remake, not reboot, if this remake is done and put out for free for users to play, I don't think that LucasArts, Lucasfilm would have much of an issue. But that was all before the House of Mouse bought them. I have no idea what Disney's going to say or do on this one, so I'd say keep your eyes open in the news to see what happens with this future Knights of the Old Republic remake and see what Disney does. But there's also a great opportunity right now to see all the work and the screenshots that have been going into this game. It looks gorgeous right now. You can go and find a lot of those over on this article that I reference in the show notes, but you can also watch them work on this live on Twitch. That's what's pretty cool. You can watch on Twitch as they work on the game. If you're a KOTOR fanboy like myself, you know this is a big deal. Little background, I've probably played through the original Knights of the Old Republic game on my Xbox. I don't know, 4 or 5 times. I've played the remake on my iPad. I've played it on my Android device. I'm unhealthily addicted to this, and it's what started my unhealthy addiction with BioWare games in general. If you've heard me talk on any of my other podcasts I do, you know I've played the Mass Effect trilogy way, way, way too many times, and this game, Knights of the Old Republic, is what started me down that path. So I cannot wait to play this updated version of it as Poem Studios develops it. I will definitely be one of the first people to download it as soon as it's available to play. Next story comes from comicbookresources.com. CBR has the update saying that Stan Lee has announced his final Canadian appearance. Stan Lee has announced his visit to Fan Expo Canada in September will mark his final appearance in the country. What he said was, "It's so pleasant to go somewhere where people like you and want to hear what you have to say. It's very flattering, but I'm 93 years old and I don't know how much longer I'll be able to do it. I want to make this one big event." I kind of understand where Stan the Man's coming from. He's been doing the convention circuit forever and making the long trips to go to other countries. it wears out someone of a younger age. Hell, I'm 30-ish, and I know traveling a lot wears me down. I can't imagine doing it at Stan's age. He's about 3 times my age, and he makes these trips all the time. I totally understand why he might be wanting to say, okay, it's time to start spinning this down. He did make his final convention appearance in Europe in 2014, so he's starting to spin down convention appearances in general. No, I'm really keep my fingers crossed he doesn't start spinning down all of his US convention attendance, because I've only met the man once and I would love to get a chance to meet Stan Lee again, get him to sign a couple more books for me, not to turn around and sell, but just because, hey, it's Stan Lee. He brought some of my favorite comic book characters to life, and they're mementos that I would treasure. So kudos to you, Stan, for wanting to end on a high note in Canada, and fingers crossed you're not ending your US touring anytime soon. The final headline story for this episode, guess what, guys? Marvel realizes Disney makes lots of money. So Marvel is now going to adapt The Force Awakens into a comic series. This news comes courtesy of the fine folks over at Newsarama.com. Marvel was at the Comics Pro event this last weekend, and they announced that, hey, Star Wars The Force Awakens is coming as a 5-issue miniseries. It's going to be written by novelist Chuck Wendig, who's written some of the new EU content, illustrated by Hercules artist Luke Ross. Secret Wars artist Isad Ribic will be doing the covers. Basically, it looks really pretty. If you go online, you can see a lot of the rough concept art for how they're going to do this book, and it looks gorgeous. So why are we getting this book? Well, let's talk to Marvel editor Jordan D. White, who says, The Force Awakens knocked our socks off from the very first time we saw it, and we could not wait to start being able to play with these new awesome characters. Now we get to bring them all to the pages of our comics with an adaptation of the film we all loved so much. We're all fans first, so it's love that's bringing these pages to life. Okay, I love comic tie-ins, even if they're just adaptations to movies. I've got them for the old original trilogy. I've got some of them for when they did the prequel trilogy. Fantastic thing. Now, what's the nice flip-flop here is, on most of those, you were getting those adaptations, especially for the prequels, about the same time the prequel movies came out. In this case, Marvel and Disney, they kind of held off, and you didn't get a comic adaptation until after the movie was out. I like this move a lot because this comic series is coming out about the same time The Force Awakens is probably leaving all of your movie theaters. What better way to keep the fandom all stirred up and ready for more Star Wars news and stories than by continuing and retelling the story in a comic format? The Force Awakens is going to stay on fan minds, and this is a great way to do it. Plus, it's comics. Disney's got a great partner automatically because Disney owns Marvel. It's that simple. I can't wait to see what's going to come of this. The concept art looks beautiful. If you want to see the concept art for yourself, go check out the show notes. Head over to shownotes.nerdalertnews.com, and you can click on there, find the story, and see the early concept art for what they're going to be doing. Looks fantastic. And having seen the movie, we can be relatively confident it should be a good read also. So I don't know about you guys, but the next time I'm in my local comic shop, I will be adding the Force Awakens adaptation to my pull list. For the final story this week, we're staying in the realm of comics, but we're moving away from Marvel. We're heading over to the DC side of the house. Scott Snyder confirmed to IGN that he is in fact leaving the Batman book. It's not exactly unexpected, but it's still kind of a bummer to hear the news because his run has been fantastic. Snyder confirmed the rumors that his departure was imminent in an interview with Comic Vine earlier this week. He said, Greg and I have had a blast together on this run. It's our second to last issue together. 51 is my last issue, as well as on Batman. For me, 50 is the quiet issue, and 51 is really just a letter to the fans from us and a letter to Batman. It's the lightest I've ever written. Not lightest as in happy, but light as in not as many panels per page. It's really open. It's a chance for Greg to draw the close before we take our break. 50, we wanted to be the opposite. We wanted to be the most explosive, jam-packed, sort of blockbuster-crazed issue we've ever done. I hope it delivers in that regard. If it's one thing I've learned in the last few years of reading the Batman book, Snyder and Capullo regularly knock it out of the park. In fact, they're about the only reason I stayed on that book at one point in time is because I trusted that creative team. When they announced they're going to be doing Batman Year 1, I kind of thought, why are we going back and telling an origin story and a start again? But I said, you know what? It's Snyder and Capullo. I'll have to give it a chance. And while it was a little rough for me at first because I was going, what the heck is going on? I ended up loving the run. And had it been some other creative team, I probably wouldn't have stuck around. And again, the same thing happened recently where, spoiler alert if you haven't read the last 12 issues or so of Batman, they made it seem as though Bruce Wayne were dead. And they put Commissioner Gordon in the bat suit, inside a robotic mech suit, fighting crime. Had that been some other creative team, I probably would have jumped off the book immediately. But again, it was Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, and I said, you know what? These guys are really good. I trust them to lead me down a path where I'm going to enjoy this. And I might be a few issues behind on my Batman right now, but everything is coming together for a great finale, a great showdown, a great way for them to wrap up their run on Batman. And I, for one, can't wait to see how it ends, and I'm really bummed to see them leaving the book, even though I know they'll be working together again at some point, because Snyder has confirmed in some earlier interviews that he and Greg Capullo already have plans for a major new DC story soon, but that's only going to happen after Greg Capullo wraps up his untitled collaboration effort with Mark Millar. That's another project I'm going to want to read right there, because I enjoy a lot of Mark Millar's work, and combine that with Greg Capullo's artwork, you've got a solid deal right there. So, a solid tip of the hat to you guys. I know you can't see it because it's an audio podcast, but Greg Capullo, Scott Snyder, your run on Batman has been one for the ages. I know it has brought a lot of fans back to the Bat books, and you've gotten to do some outrageous stories simply because you've got the faith of the fanboys. We're going to stick with you because we've seen how much you both love the character, how much you've told great stories that tie us in. So if you go down a weird path on something instead of rage quitting, most fanboys like myself went, I trust these guys. They're going to take care of this character, and I'm going to get something cool. So I hope to see you guys working together again on a Batman book, but regardless of what you're working on in the future, the names Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo at the top of the book mean it will be added to my pull list. Thank you guys for all of the great work you did taking care of Bruce Wayne and Batman. Greatly appreciated. If you want any more details on any of the stories I've covered this week in Nerd Alert News, you can go and check those out in the show notes. They're available online for everyone to be able to read. It's in the episode description of the MP3 file you've downloaded now, or just head on over to shownotes.nerdalertnews.com. All the show notes for every episode that have been published are embedded on that page, and you can read any or all of them that you want. If you wanted to get in touch with me or give some topics for me to talk about in a future episode of Nerd Alert News, there's a ton of ways to do that. You can head on over to nerdalertnews.com. You can email me at nerdalertnews247@gmail.com. Tweet at NerdAlertShow like Listener Cage and Sean has done and sent me some great stories. Don't worry, I'll be picking up some more of those next episode probably. Or head on over to Facebook at facebook.com/NerdAlertShow. Any feedback I get from you guys is fantastic, and I greatly appreciate it. And if you get a chance, it would be great if you're an Apple user, if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a review for Nerd Alert News there. We've gotten some great reviews so far. Exceedingly grateful to everyone that has reviewed so far. But more reviews would be great so that we can get the star rating to start showing up by default. Right now, iTunes does not show the ratings for Nerd Alert News because I guess there's not enough star ratings in yet. So please, if you're a listener of the show, head on over to iTunes, leave a review of what you think the show is worth. I hope it's 5 stars, but if you legitimately don't think it's 5 stars, let me know what it is you do or don't like, and I can make changes to the show. With all that being said, I think that's going to wrap up this latest installment of Nerd Alert News, but don't worry, I'll be back real soon with your next Nerd Alert. Until then, bye guys. You've been listening to Nerd Alert News. For more information, head on over to nerdalertnews.com. The music used in this show is produced by Kevin MacLeod and can be found at incompetech.com.